Hello everyone, in this video we're going to explain the theoretical foundations of teaching literature. And in this video we will have three presenters, Alfira, Uki, and Patrisia. There will be three main things that we're going to explain in this video. The first one, what is literature? The second one, the key literary theories, and then the last one is the role of literature in education. What is actually literature? Literature is a broad term used to refer to written works such as books, magazines, short stories, plays, and poems. Literature can provide insights into human experience and can be used as a way to explore ideas, express emotions, and tell stories. And it has been a powerful tool for expressing and exploring our humanity. When discussing literature, one can talk about the author's style, the themes explored in the work, the characters and their motivations, and the historical context in which the work was written. The first one is formalism. Formalism focuses on the literary text itself, examining its structure, form, and literary devices. And these are the key aspects of formalism. The first one, rejection of external context. Formalists emphasize that the autonomy of the literary work disregarding historical, biographical, or social context. Instead, they concentrate on the internal workings of the text, according to Edeltrudis and also Skovsky. This perspective aligns with the ideas of Roman Jakobson in 1921, who argued that the literary function of language is distinct from its communicative use. The second one, emphasis on literary devices. Formalism analyzes how literary devices such as imagery, metaphor, symbolism, and rhyme contribute to the overall effect of the text. It's according to Jakobson in 1960. Viktor Skovsky in 1917 and Boris in 1926 also emphasized the importance of studying poetic language and narrative techniques rather than external meaning to hold readers' attention. The third one is defamiliarization. Russian formalists introduced the concept of estrangement or defamiliarization, which refers to the way literature renews language and makes familiar seem new. By distorting everyday language, literature forces readers to pay attention to the text itself. As Skovsky in 1917 famously stated, the purpose of art is to make objects unfamiliar, so that perception is heightened. The last one, literature as the specific organization of language. Formalists view literature not as a reflection of reality, but as a particular organization of language with its own laws and structures. Jakobson in 1960 stated that poetic language is self-referential, functioning according to intrinsic linguistic principles rather than external meaning. The second foundational theory of literature here is structuralism. Structuralism draws on linguistics to understand literature as a system of signs and structures, and these are the four key aspects of structuralism. The first one, language as a system. Structuralism applies Ferdinand de Saussure's linguistic theory, which views language as a system of signs and consisting of signifiers. It means words or symbols, and the signifieds or the concepts. Meaning is derived from the relationships between these signs within the system. And Roland Barthes in 1967 extended this idea, arguing that text operates through codes that create meaning in a relational manner. And the second one is underlying structures. Structuralists seek to uncover the underlying structures and codes that govern literary text. They believe that these structures, often unconscious, shape the meaning and interpretation of the literature. Barthes in 1965 further explored how texts operate to structured systems that guide interpretation, emphasizing the reader's role in decoding these structures. This aligns with Todorov's structuralist poetics, which examines the deep structures underlying literary genres. And the third aspect here is myth and narrative. Structuralism analyzes myths and narratives to identify recurring patterns and structures. Claude Lévi-Strauss in 1955 applied structuralist principles to study of myths, arguing that they reflect underlying structures of the human mind. He demonstrated how myths from different cultures share common oppositional structures, for example, nature versus culture, that reveal universal human thought patterns. Vladimir Propp in 1968 also contributed to structuralist narrative analysis by identifying 31 functions that shape folk tales. The last key aspect here is poetics. Structuralism gives rise to poetics, which focuses on understanding the conventions that make literature possible. Poetics emphasizes the literary system and literary competence. Jakobson in 1960 distinguished between poetics and interpretation, arguing that poetics should analyze the structural features that make a text literary rather than impose external meaning. And the third foundational theory of literature here is poststructuralism. Poststructuralism builds upon structuralism but critiques its emphasis on fixed structures and systems. And there are also four key aspects of poststructuralism. The first one is deconstruction. Poststructuralism employs deconstruction, a method developed by Derrida to reveal the instability and contradictions within texts. Deconstruction challenges the idea of a fixed center or meaning in language and literature. Derrida in 1972 introduced the concept of difference, which suggests that meaning is always deferred, making language inherently unstable. The second aspect is instability of meaning. Post-structuralists argue that meaning is not inherent in language, but it is constantly deferred and disseminated. They reject the notion of a stable relationship between signifier and signified, highlighting the ambiguity and multiplicity of meanings. The third aspect of post-structuralism here is critique of authorship. Roland Barthes in 1977, in his essay, The Death of the Author, proclaims the author's diminished role in determining the meaning of a text. Instead, meaning is produced by the reader's thought through the act of reading. Foucault, in 1969, built on this idea in his What is an Author?, arguing that the author function is a social construct that rather than a stable origin of meaning. And the last aspect here is that post-structuralism focuses on discourse. It examines how power relations shape discourse and construct meaning. It analyzes how language is used to create and maintain social hierarchies and ideologies. Foucault, in 1977, emphasized that discourse is not just a reflection of reality, but actively construct knowledge and power structures.
Hello everyone, this is me, Patrisia, and now I'm going to talk about postcolonialism, feminist theory, and reader response theory. The first one, postcolonialism. According to Lila Gandhi in 1998 and Janice Bland in 2018 with their book related to postcolonialism theory. This theory, postcolonialism, is the theory that discusses about the impact of colonization on culture, identity, and power. So it looks at how colonized people have been affected by European colonial rule and how they have responded to it. So it helps us to understand the long-term impact of colonization on identity, culture, and power dynamics in today's world. The next is there are 6 aspects of postcolonialism theory. The first is colonial legacies. Postcolonialism examines how the history of colonialism continues to affect former colonist territories, including social structures, cultural practices, political system. According to a book by Fanny in 2004 entitled The Verge of the Earth, Fanny discussed about the psychological and cultural impact of colonialism, starting that the history of colonialism left deep scars on the psychologies of the colonist people, affecting their identity and societal structure. The second, identity and hybridity. According to Baba in 2004, he introduced the concept of hybridity. Well, this postcolonialism theory explores how colonist people shape their identity in response to colonial rule, often resulting in cultural fusion or hybridity. Back to what Baba said before, it refers to the process of mixing of culture that emerged from colonial encounters. He argues that this hybridity challenges fixed identity and creates new forms of cultural expression. The third, otherness. This concept refers to how colonized people often define themselves as different or inferior. So it creates an imbalance of power that postcolonial theory seeks to address, according to Said 2014. The next, subaltern voices. Well, postcolonialism emphasized the importance of giving voice to marginalized or subaltern groups that have been silenced by colonial power. So it advocates for this group to tell their own story. It's according to Morris in 2010. The next, resistance and agency. This theory looks at how colonized people resist colonial power and assert their own identity and culture, often through literature and art. It's according to Smith in 2016. And the last one is cultural representation. Well, in this part, postcolonialism analyzes how literature and media represent colonist culture, challenging stereotypes, and promoting a more nuanced understanding of this society. It passed according to Lila Gandhi in 1998. And there are 3 examples of books related to postcolonialism, like Chinua Achebe, entitled Things Fall Apart, Mukiwa Tionghoa Decolonizing in the Mind, and Salman Rushdie about Midnight Children. So those books talk about traditional culture and colonial powers, African identity, and India's transition from colonialism to independence. Next, we move to the second theory, which is feminist theory. According to Matson's book in 2000 entitled Feminist Theory and Literary Practice, this theory is a critical analytical framework that examines gender inequality and gender roles in shaping individual experiences as well as social, political, and economic structure. So it seeks to understand the operation of women and promote gender inequality in all aspects of life. There are 6 aspects of feminist theory. The first is gender as a social construction. Feminist theory believed that gender is not natural or biological, but rather a social construction learned through socialization and culture. This is contrast to sex, which is referred to biological characteristic. The second, patriarchy. This feminist theory believed that how patriarchy manifests in various cultural institutions and practice, such as family, law, religion, and media. So, patriarchy is a social system in which men have greater power and privilege than women. The third, oppression of women. Feminist theory identifies various forms of oppression that women experience, including economic discrimination, sexual violence, lack of political representation, and gender stereotyping. The next, identity politics. Feminist theory recognizes that women experiences vary based on race, class, sexuality, ethnicity, and other factors. Therefore, it is important to consider cross-cutting perspective in feminist analysis. The next, woman emancipation. The main goal of feminist theory is to achieve woman emancipation and create a more just and equal society. So this can be achieved through various strategies, including political advocacy, education, cultural activism, and social science. And the last one is different school of feminism. Well, when we talk about feminism, there are a lot of things to talk about. And there are different focuses and approaches, such as liberal feminism, Marxist feminism, and radical feminism, and so on. So the relationship between feminist theory and literature is dynamic, with literature serving as both a reflection in societal norm and a tool to challenge and change those norms. There are two established books that talk about feminist theory. The first is Gender Matters, Feminism and Subversion of Identity according to Judith Butler in 1998. And another one comes from Indonesia, Habis Gelap Terbitlah Terang by Bukatini in 1911. After we talk about formalism, structuralism, post-structuralism, postcolonialism, feminist theory, now we come to the last theory, which is reader-response theory. According to a book by Edeltrudis in 1996 entitled Literary Theory and Introduction, this reader-response theory is literary theory that emphasizes the role of the reader in creating the meaning of text. So instead of viewing a literature as a set of meanings determined solely by the author, this theory states that each readers bring their own experiences, emotions, and interpretation to a text, making the reading experiences unique and subjective. There are 6 aspects of reader response theory according to Paul F. Davis and Kenneth Womack in 2002 and updated to 2018. The first one is subjectivity of interpretation. Well, this reader response theory emphasizes that each readers has their own backgrounds, belief, and emotion that can affect how they interpret a text. The second, active engagement. In active engagement, this reader response theory suggests that reading is an active process in which readers interact with the text, filling the blanks, and making connections based on their own experiences. The third, diversity of meanings. So, this reader response theory recognizes that a single text can generate multiple interpretations depending on the reader's perspective and the context itself. The fourth, the role of emotion. Like what I have told you before, that this reader response theory make all the experiences unique and subjective because each reader has their own feelings. So here, the role of emotion of reader response theory highlighting the importance of emotional responses in shaping how readers engage with the text, suggesting that feelings can be just as important as intellectual analysis. The next, contextual influences. In reader response theory, contextual influences consider at how historical, cultural, and social context of each person, each reader, influence the reading experiences and the meaning of derived from a text. And the last is textual interaction. So in this case, it focuses on the interaction between the reader and the text, exploring at how the text form response and reflection from the reader. According to Rosenblatt and Winey-Seaboth, there are 2 types of reading. From Rosenblatt, aesthetic and non-aesthetic reading. Aesthetic reading refers to the process when you focus on feeling, image, and events happening in the story while you're reading. Meanwhile, non-aesthetic reading is the process when you pay attention more to facts, data, and what you can remember after finishing the text. It's more analytical and focused to understand the content. The second, implied reader and implied writer from Winey-Seaboth. where when you say that implied reader is the process when, as you read, you create the persona based on your understanding and engagement with the story. Meanwhile, implied writer is the process when the writer has already conveys the specific meanings, themes, and values through their words. So they already shape how the story is told and what idea are presented. Example of book that you maybe can read is it's like all of the literature that we read can be the process of reader response theory. Because basically, we come to the definition itself by Eagleton in 1996 that reader response theory is literary theory that emphasizes the role of reader in creating the meaning of text. So, for this one, I think all of us in the class can explain, can share how this reader response theory resonates us in our daily life.
Hey everyone, so this is Alfira speaking right now. I'm here going to explain you about the three different roles of literature in our education. And yeah, as you can see on your screen right now, we have three roles of literature in our education. The first one, we have the cultural transmission. The second one, we have the critical thinking. And the third one, we have the empathy building. So without any further ado, let's go to the first one, which is the cultural transmission. Well, what does it mean by literature as the cultural transmission actually? So, literature is the fundamental thing. It's something essential and important for us because we as the society, we transmit our values, we transmit our tradition, and also we transmit our beliefs between generation to generation, or let's say it's something hereditary. And then it maintains and communicates history. It also contains the ways of thinking, the conventions, things like that. And in cultural transmission, we can also say that literature, it can be the bridge for the cultural things that we have. For example, you got a story from your mother, your historical thing from your the historical thing from your mother, and then your mother got it from your grandparents, and your grandparents, they got it from your great grandparents, things like that. So that's why we called it something hereditary. You got it from your ancestors, things like that. And then the second one, we have the critical thinking. So literature, it's not only the bridge for our cultural things, but it can also be the things to develop our critical thinking abilities. So in literature, we as the listener, we as the readers or audiences, in dealing with literary work, it requires us to, interact with the complex idea. So it's not only like simplifying the complex, but here you have to also deal with the question assumption. You have to comprehend with the numerous levels of meaning contained in your literary work, something like that. And here, we as the audiences, we as the listeners or the readers, we improve our critical thinking abilities by examining the themes, the character, the problem in our literary work. So basically, we have to connect the dots with another dots, things like that. Use our mind to think more and bigger, things like that. And then the last one, we have the literature as the empathy building. So we have discussed about the cultural transmission and then also the critical thinking. And last one, we use something with our heart actually. So literature as the empathy building. What does it mean by literature as the empathy building? Well, here's the thing. Literature has a distinctive capacity to create empathy within our heart by allowing us as the readers, listeners, audiences to see the world through the different perspective, through the eyes of different individuals from various background, from various historical periods and situation. And this allows people to relate to others' experiences and comprehend feelings and then also problems and also the achievements that might differ from their own. So they can really feel that by having the literary work, something like that. So I think that's all. Those are the three roles of of literature in our education. Thank you for listening.